All right, welcome into Rise to the Victors. Brandon Justice from Maize Blue Review today. A little bit of a smaller crew, three-man show today. We've got Brock Heilig to my right if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on the show, in the car, or wherever you may be, and in the audio world, then Brock is just here. And then we've got Zach Libby as well, who needs no introduction. A man, a myth, a legend, truly, in and of himself. So, how are you guys feeling? We'll start with Zach. I know you need to go first. So, but seriously, Libby, how are you? You shot down on the field for the fourth straight. You starting to get a hang of it? I mean, for those who don't know or lack context, Libby had never really shot games before this year, right? I'm not mistaken on that.
Yeah, I mean, every internship that I've had in the past, I've never taken photos, so I got a camera and, automatic settings are making a difference, so it's been nice.
Hey, think smarter, not harder, right? So
Yeah,
Libby's
exactly.
Libby's been on the field shooting the games. Have you gotten the grasp of it now more than ever before? Are you starting to feel yourself a little bit 4 weeks in?
I think it's just a matter of seeing guys who've done it for longer than all of us have been alive, certain angles, certain timing of where to be, there's certain ways of how to follow a play through a camera lens. It's different from the eyes. So it's a good, different experience. It's a lot easier to take college photos compared to high school photos just because of lighting and stuff. I can't explain it, but it's just how it is. So, no, I mean, I've never been to the big house before, and I'm 26 years old. So it's just been fun, just to get that bucket list off my hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you haven't seen his photos, honestly, I'm not even brown nosing here. Libby's actually done extremely well with the photo. I had a mic problem again. So if you're me all sorts of fits, and I just can't figure it out. But we're back anyway. Brock, how are you doing in your world? You were in the student section. For those who don't know, Brock, an intern here at Rise to the Victors, does a great job for Maize Blue Review writing about women's basketball and various others. So you got a student section experience. How was that?
It was pretty cool. I was sitting with Davis, who couldn't be here on the show tonight, but
The kid's been up for a while. I respect it.
Yeah, it was a good time. We had some fun, and it was a pretty intense game. I'll tell you what, a lot of the people in the student section weren't really expecting it to be that close, and I'm sure most of the stadium didn't really either. But the tension was there; you could feel it in the air. So it was an interesting experience.
Good segue. Before we jump into that segue, make sure you guys check out michigan.rivals.com. Use code UMB2B. It was free through basketball season. We still got some time left on that, right? Very little, but we might be out of time by the time they hear it. But go check us out, michigan.rivals.com. Even if our trial has expired by then, it's more than worth it to come check us out. Join the Den, the exclusive community, your one-stop shop for all Michigan Wolverines athletic coverage, recruiting from Zach Libby and Davis Mosley, both leaders in their respective beats, and then Brock Heilig covering the heck out of Olympic sports and dipping his chips in some football here and there as well. Football, tons of intel there, tons of intel with basketball from Josh, and just a great crew. Trevor McHugh does a great job in various ways, the Swiss Army knife. We've just got a great crew, so come check us out, michigan.rivals.com. So, all right, moving on from that, let's talk about Michigan, Maryland. Brock, you mentioned it. There was some tension. Michigan did not win this game without a pushback from Maryland, who tends to be a bit of a pushover, not only for Michigan, but most teams around the Big Ten. Over the last several years, Michigan's really just kind of pummeled through Maryland. Besides, 2014, there might have been a couple of games in between there where they struggled a bit in the lower years, but in the Jim Harbaugh era, it's really been a pummeling of Maryland for the most part. And last year, Donovan Edwards, 10 catches, 170 yards. Of course, he was not in this game, but the 56-10 final in that game said a lot about where those two programs were at. But this year, and I don't know if you guys can hear, but my cat, as he always does, makes his guest appearance on this show, Acuna. So he loves when dad podcasts. Anywho, before I start calling myself dad to my cat on a public forum and embarrass myself almost intentionally, Michigan struggled with Maryland. And for me, I kind of saw this coming back in January. I always thought this was going to be a trap game. I did the Scott Bell, what do you call it? I can't remember the name of what he calls it, his newsletter, which is great. And I appreciate Scott's analysis, of course. And he does a media poll every year where he asks about 14 different questions, everything from the record to the bowl game for Michigan to their but one of the questions is biggest trap game or the trap game. And my answer was Maryland, and that was back in August. And I had felt that way for months and kind of caught some slack for it. And some people kind of agreed, like anything else, like any other opinion, not saying it was some sort of extraordinary take or anything. But I really thought this game was going to be tough for Michigan for various reasons, right? Like Michigan has that narrative where, everyone always says, "Oh, a mobile quarterback always hurts us." No, it's good quarterbacks hurt every team, and usually good quarterbacks are also mobile in today's world of college football. Hardly any quarterback that's good isn't at least mobile in layman's terms, right? Like it's just one of those things they're kind of hand in hand. So the excuse that Michigan can't handle, well, it's not even an excuse. It's just like it's totally wrong, I guess, analysis of the situation. Talia Tagovailoa, or however you say Talia, I don't know. I've been saying Talia forever, and I heard it's something different now, but whatever. I'm rolling with it. Tagovailoa is one of those guys where he can move with his legs, but he's a good quarterback. So there was just a lot of replies on the board and on Twitter about how Michigan struggles with mobile quarterbacks. And it's not that. It's just good quarterbacks are good. We're in an era of college football and football in general where offensive success is far more common than defensive success. And since Michigan played Our Lady of the Blind and Deaf for the first 3 weeks of the season, everyone thinks they're just going to run through everyone and be Stonewall Jackson every game. And that's just impossible in today's world of college football. Oklahoma lost to Kansas State at home. And in Kansas State 2-1, Adrian Martinez, of course, like he beat them because he's a good quarterback. He's not as good as Tagovailoa, but like, who was the star of that upset? It was the quarterback. So a quarterback's always going to beat a good team. It's not like, oh, Michigan just struggles with mobile quarterbacks. It's good quarterbacks beat good teams. And Michigan, I think, beat a good team against Maryland and beat Talia Tagovailoa. And so the reason I made it my trap game is for the exact reason we saw on the field. The only thing that went different than I thought was that Michigan's offensive success really wasn't convincing to me, especially coming into the game as the number one scoring offense in the country. Granted, against the schedule they had faced, that was not the most difficult feat to accomplish, but all the same was a really impressive feat to average that many points. So I thought they were going to score some more. Maryland had put a lot of things on tape with a three-man rush, and I thought that JJ would handle the three-man rush well, but that three-man rush fooled him because of the max zones and the eight-man dropbacks were all over. So that's really my opinion on the game, was that it went how I thought for Maryland offensively, but it did not go as I thought for Michigan offensively. So I thought it was going to be a trap game from the preseason. Going into the week, my prediction was 52-27. So I was right on par with the 27 points for Maryland, but Michigan, I was way off. So kind of just that prediction score kind of epitomizes my opinion on the game. Was just that's where I was off. So I'll hand it off to Brock. What did you think about the game? Give me two things that were good and two things that were bad about Michigan against Maryland.
Yeah. As we were doing as I was writing my staff prediction for the weekly prediction piece that we do, I was thinking how this Maryland game could be very reminiscent to last year's Rutgers game, where Michigan won by a touchdown, and it kind of was the same thing. The tension was there; you could feel it in the air, and it went very similar to how Rutgers went last year, and we saw it last season when Michigan kind of cruised through its non-conference schedule and came into Big Ten play for Rutgers and didn't showcase their abilities like we would have thought, right? And so it kind of happened again this year, but they were able to squeeze out the win, and ultimately that's all that matters. But I'd say one good thing just to start would be Jesse Minter and the defense's ability to adjust after halftime, because in the first half, it seemed like Michigan couldn't really stop Maryland on offense. Put together these long, methodical drives and just killed clock and scored on most of them. I'm not sure they even punted once in the first half. And Michigan came out there in the second half. Obviously, Minter and the defense made adjustments, and they were able to get it done and hold Maryland to not they didn't perform as well on offense in the second half. So I'd say that was probably one of the good things about the game. And another good thing I'd say, obviously, I mean, how can you not talk about Blake Corum, right? Career day for him. What was it? 30 carries, 243 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He's been incredible, and I don't know if we want to go straight to the bad here right now, or if we want to go over to.
No, yeah, go ahead. Too good, too bad.
Okay, and I'd say two bad things to start would be, JJ McCarthy. He didn't play very well. He admitted it in the post game presser. He said, you know, I've played better, and it obviously wasn't my best day, but I was talking about this with Davis after the game. If a bad day for JJ McCarthy is 220 yards and 2 touchdowns and 18 for 26 or whatever he was, I think most Michigan fans will take that if that's a bad game from JJ McCarthy. So it wasn't his best game, but he's learning. He's young, and one other bad thing I think was pretty obviously the CJ Stokes fumble there. I think it was late in the first half. Michigan was driving.
His only carry too.
Yeah, and I don't think he saw the field again. He was in for one play, fumbled, and didn't see the field again. So you just got to hope that if you're a Michigan fan, that doesn't ruin his confidence, for the season. You could see him there laying on the ground after he fumbled, just kind of holding his head down into the ground. He knew he had screwed it up, but Michigan needs that running back depth if Edwards is going to be out for an extended period of time. So hopefully he can recover and get his head in the right spot.
If you're watching on YouTube, then you saw my cat actually got himself into the shot on purpose. So, like I said, he's begging to get hired. So if Josh is watching this, the kid can write for sure. But you make good points there, Brock, about many things. I think JJ McCarthy definitely didn't have. And here's the thing: I think it's the context of what didn't go well for him. It might not be the stat line. He had 70% completion percentage. It was 69%. It was like 69.6. So right around 69, 70% completion percentage is always going to be good. Like I think everyone's going to accept that. I mean, it's not what he was at, which was 88% going into the game, but that's unheard of and not sustainable in a realistic world, right? So, but it's the context. It's the fact that we as in analyzing this team, we really thought, I think as a staff, we were all kind of consensus, and I think everyone still feels this way, and I still think it's going to be true. But the big thing with JJ, we thought, was the big arm. That was the big contrast between him and Cade. That was what opened up. The field opened up. You could push downfield. Man, but he missed a lot of throws on Saturday that we haven't seen him miss before. And so I think that's where people are kind of like taking away and maybe overstating and over exaggerating the day JJ had. Because if you look at the stat line, of course, like no interceptions, first and foremost, clean, right? But 2 fumbles lost. Well, 2 fumbles, both recovered by the team, so not fumbles lost. But you think about those 2 fumbles and what happens if it goes the other way. Now, I know a lot of people out there are like, well, it didn't, so it doesn't matter. But those things are problematic, and that's exactly what kept JJ from getting this job in the first place behind Cade, was stuff like that, where it was just wild, things he didn't need to do. I think the run that he had where the fumble was forced and it was in Maryland's side, or Maryland's end of the field, I think they were like right around the 35. It was a keeper. It was a designed run. And he fumbled that because somebody came in and knocked it out. It wasn't like he was really – his hold on to the ball really wasn't that bad. He seatbelted it by everything you could see, and came through, got punched, and that was kind of that. But the other one where he's running around doing the hokey pokey with the entire Maryland defensive line and had to use the ball as a prop to stay up, which means you're down, and I don't know if he knew that. Those type of things are going to hurt you against better teams. And I know that sounds elementary, but that's the context behind why people are upset about McCarthy's day. Now, granted, Brock, you're exactly right. If that's a bad day for JJ McCarthy, then Michigan's probably going to be all right for the majority of their games. And I like to think that by the Ohio State game, he's probably going to grow quite a bit, because at that point you're talking about 10 starts. And right now he's coming off of 2 going into that Maryland game, coming off of 2 against, again, like not good teams. I don't know what else we can call them for fun at this point, but not good teams. So I think the experience will help him. But I mean, hey, Penn State ain't far away, right? You're talking 3 weeks. So, that's a game where Penn State defense is I think unequivocally the best defense they're going to see, besides maybe shocker Ohio State's, which was one of the worst ones last year from a multiple perspectives. Not the worst on their schedule, but much worse than previous Ohio State defenses. Whereas this one looks like it's better than the rest, right? So I think that's really where the McCarthy type of stuff is coming from, is the context of it all. But the stat line surely was good, and if that's him at his worst, I think they're going to be all right. So that's a good point. We'll move over to Zach. We're going to do again too good and too bad, Libby. So I know you're going to take a bit of a recruiting angle here in the beginning and give us some updates there. So we'll pass it over to you.
I think the good was obviously winning when you have the number 9 ranked player in the country for the weekend. And if you don't know, Nicholas Harbor, the 5-star athlete who plays tight end, wide receiver, and edge, was on campus for his official visit. Outside of Jane Davis, this will be the most important official weekend this season for Michigan. We've talked so much on Maize Blue Review about him and how he could just be transcending on both sides of the ball. But I think winning against a team that was also in Nicholas Harper's top 7 that was released a little while ago, I think that was very important just based on football success. There was another official visit, 3-star offensive lineman, Nathan Afobe, who was there. If you don't know him, he is a very high target for Michigan's offensive line, and Sherrone Moore, for this fall. He's a little bit different because he's on a fall break at his high school, so he's going to be there a little bit longer than the others. It usually ends right now. But no, he's going to be there a while, and I think that's going to make a difference. And with the win as well to maybe propel to a possible commitment, which we'll be eyeing on. But yeah, no, it was very important to at least get the win with Harbor there. It can lay a foundation for what Harbor can expect from a Michigan team if he joins, to win the wins that they're supposed to and able to, handle business despite, a close matchup. So, especially against a team, like I said, that's closest to his hometown, and is obviously eyeing him for an official visit as well. So that was very important. On the football side, though, I think my number one positive was Luke Schoonmaker. Obviously had a big role with Eric All's absence. I'm looking at box score right now, like 7 catches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. Got the first touchdown of the game after the fumble on the kickoff. So really good to see him get into the mix that early. For a guy who will probably be as the focal point on the tight ends, as long as Eric is gone for this season. I think it just shows how important he is for the offense moving forward. He was near perfect in the passing game, so that was great to see. The bad. Edge rushing. I think it was more so allowing Tagovailoa to get outside the pocket and make plays. There was a couple times where he was able to get out, find his receivers, and move downfield. I don't think, outside of the finals, the fourth quarter, there wasn't much of a pass rushing presence. It kind of, in my opinion, it kind of goes to show the lot, if you're going to do pass rushing by committee, at some point, there's got to be some guy who steps up. This weekend was going to be a big test to see who actually did after 3 games of experience, pretty much for everybody. But yeah, this is something I'm going to be looking out for in terms of who actually is able to, move themselves outside from the rest and really be that go-to guy. It's not fair to say to mirror what Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson did last year, but there's got to be some guy who can be the go-to guy, and making quarterbacks uncomfortable in the pocket. I guess the bad too, it would have been nice to see more freshmen out there. Derek Moore had 11 snaps. Colson Loveland had 5. Mason Graham had 17. Darius Clemens had 2. CJ Stokes had 1. I know he fumbled, but he only had 2. I know he fumbled, but still, if Donovan Edwards, let's just use CJ Stokes for example. If Donovan Edwards is going to be if it's going to be out for a little while, I mean, Blake Corum can't have 30 carries a night. Like that's just, health wise and production wise, it just can't, it won't repeat. So, having that RB3 that's relied upon is going to be important. So I know they're still getting into things and that was their first true experience, but I think it would be nice to see more of the incomers get more playing experience.
All right. We're talking stats here. I'm not participating in the good and the bad because I feel like we got quite a bit out there. I would say I'll add something. I think Roman Wilson was really good again, and I think he continues to and impress us there in that regard. I think he's just really looked. Not to say he wasn't going to keep looking good. This microphone business it's tough, but not to say Roman Wilson wasn't going to be good this year. It's just he's even better than we thought he would be. So with that in mind, I just think he continues to ascend. Like he showed that out route movement against, or it might have been a corner. I haven't looked back at the tape yet, but whatever it was in the end zone, the throw from JJ for the touchdown is either corner or an out, but it was a beautiful route and he's running it well. And it's showing off that he's not just a speed guy. He can handle, he's handling like a really high volume right now in comparison to what we imagined he would. He was a deep threat and a deep shot coming into the year. And he has kind of formulated into all three levels of the field. I mean, he can be vertical, he can be underneath, and he can, go out there deep and get it. So he's really, and he can hit seams, like obviously, right, with the speed he has. So I think he's really impressed us just because he's done so much in so many levels. So not something we expected hearing out of camp. Like we heard the receivers were good out of camp, right? But we really didn't hear that aside from Ronnie Bell, anyone was like shining as the 2 or 3. So I really think Roman Wilson in the the preseason talk kind of like got left behind. And he's really shown why he shouldn't have been. So I'll go with Roman Wilson, another big day. The run blocking. I mean, Corum said it himself. He thinks, and I know this is a press conference, but he said it's the best O-line in the country, and they haven't performed quite. Did a much better job, I think, than they were. They did in the first 3 games. This microphone nightmare is just killing me, man. I don't know what's going on with it, and it's bad radio. And sorry for all the fans at home listening. I'm just happy we're not live today. They're all on mute, but again, I think it's one of those things where we've just continued to see good things from the offensive line in the run game. We just need to start seeing it in the pass pro. Trente Jones looked better, so that's good. And I think the pass pro overall looked mostly better, but JJ did have to do some running around. Now, was that running around a byproduct of JJ waiting way too long before he decided, okay, I'm either going to run, get as many yards as I can out of this without putting myself in danger, which he didn't do enough of. Sometimes he needs to take 4 instead of trying to take 40. And then on top of that, is he just trying to make the big play, right? Or was that a pass pro problem? Again, haven't looked at the tape yet. We'll talk about that, or actually Trevor McHugh and Stephen Ostentowski will talk about that on Cutups this week on Tuesday, I believe. So that'll be good, and you'll get a good look at what went wrong there. But as far as what I can see, it just kind of looked like JJ was taking way too much time. So the pass pro, I think, initially, an initial reaction looked better than it did in the first 3 games, especially Trente Jones. So, and then aside from that, let's talk about some stats. We've been doing a little bit of this on the show lately, trying to pick out some numbers that kind of stuck out. And one thing I wanted to talk about before we dive into that was a play call. We're just going to stick with the really bad audio because the microphone continues to unplug, and we're just going to roll. This is how you work on the fly, boys. This is how you work on the fly. Adversity is nothing. I got to call Rode and figure out what's going on with my microphone. That was like $200. Shout out to Rivals. All right, so train of thoughts way off after that debacle. But the play calling out of halftime, we'll go back and kind of recap what happened. So Michigan comes out of halftime. They run strictly run. They just run strictly run plays. Like it almost kind of like took JJ out of it. And then the one time they let JJ throw, it broke down and he got sacked from the blind side. So it was a 3 and out. And Michigan at that point had taken the lead and regained the lead before halftime. But up until that, the point they regained the lead, you remember the 2-minute drill that JJ ran and got the ball down. And I think was it Roman who scored or Corum who scored that touchdown before halftime?
That one was Quorum.
So it was Corum, right? That's what I thought. So when Corum scored at halftime and Michigan took that lead 17-13, I thought, okay, they get the ball out of halftime. They've got a good opportunity to drive down the field and, make this a 2-possession thing and kind of just roll from there, right? But it's like the exact opposite of what happened. They came out in 3-and-out. And again, like it didn't detriment them, but you got to think like the script out of halftime should be more successful than that. And what went into that script going wrong? Was it JJ taking too much time again and the blind side being a break, or was the blind side a breakdown? How much time did he have in the pocket? Right. So, and it looked like a mix of both on that in particular play, but you have to question the script at halftime. Of course, the run game was working. So it's like one of those things where the run really wasn't the issue. It was just, I guess, a little bit of where they were. I mean, it was 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 8 when they tried to run. I think Blake got stuffed like right at the line on the first handoff. So the play calling out of halftime was questionable, in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think about that, Brock. I'll let you voice your opinion a bit.
Yeah. Like you said, it took them like 2 or 3 drives to even attempt to pass. McCarthy dropped back once and like you said, got sacked. There was one play that caught my attention, though. I can't remember if it was at the end of the first half or at the beginning of the second half, but I think Michigan was around the 50 or something, and it was 3rd and 4, and they brought Isaiah Gash in, and they handed it off to him, and he got 2 yards, and then Michigan had 4th and 2 and punted. I can't quite remember if that was at the end of the first half or
No, that was in the beginning of the second. Or yeah, you might be right. It was the Isaiah Gash handoff that really made everyone kind of scratch their heads a little bit.
yeah, I that one was
I think it was
one
on the
that,
second drive of the second half.
yeah, that was one though that just really confused me because you got the ball to midfield and then you bring in what your 4th or 5th string running back and hand it off to him for a 2-yard gain and then punt. So that one was a little confusing for me, I know, and I'm sure many others. But yeah, the play calling overall to begin the second half was a little lackluster, it seemed, and luckily it didn't cost them anything later on.
What do we think about Jake Moody? You guys think Jake Moody's fine? Just, I mean, that kick was rough. Like it missed by quite a bit, and Jake's been pretty dead eye for Michigan to say the least. He's literally the kicker of the year from last year, but he hasn't really had many opportunities in the non-conference to kick as many as you'd like your kicker to kick early on in the season, having to come kick and not really a high pressure situation against Maryland and an overall easy kick for him. I mean, what was it? 42 yards, I believe. I mean, that's typically pretty chip shotty for Jake Moody, which I know sounds, you say like a 42 yards is a chip shot for a college kicker and you sound crazy, but Jake Moody's been pretty freaking good for 3 or 4 years now, right? So you're kind of just used to it. Are we worried about Moody, or is this kind of just a flash in the pan type of mistake for him, wet day in Ann Arbor type of deal? What do you guys think about that? Libby, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I mean, college kickers aren't like the NFL. Like, it's not automatic every time, even for the reigning kicker of the year. Like, I mean, from the sideline perspective, it was just kind of shock, like It was like, wow, Moody missed.
And that's the reputation he's built. It's how good he's been. So that's a credit to him, really.
Yeah, like it was. In my head, I was thinking like this is going to affect the game really bad. Like this is going to be the reason for why they win or lose, and for them to not, it didn't really, but it could have helped a lot. I think, like you said, not a lot of opportunities to kick, not high pressure situations. He'll have his best. He'll have his next chance next week in Iowa, which is, regardless if it's noon or night, it's a boisterous crowd. So, we'll see how he responds next week.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, some numbers here. A little bit of by the numbers action. Just taking a look at some things that happened in the game. Michigan ran 40 rushing plays as opposed to 26 passing plays. That's, you would almost think it would be more. I mean, it was obviously working. Blake Corum continued to be fed. Now, granted, I think, what was it? Think about the yardage. About 80-ish of his yards came on 2 carries, both of them one was on 4th, one was on 3rd down, both of those big touchdown runs for him. But, he was just awesome, right? Like, start to finish, he was awesome. The run blocking was great, but Corum was making a ton of cuts that were impressive. What he saw on 4th and 1 there, in a high-pressure, rushed, no-huddle situation where the snap was really quick. And granted, Maryland wasn't set or anything, but just to see the outside and not just feel like he needs to stuff forward. Like he easily could have gone right up the middle and taken the 2 yards and called it, but the ability and the instinctive ability, I should say, to bounce outside there and hit that and then turn it into a touchdown, it really says something, because Michigan was probably going to, I mean, they were settling for field goals a couple of times throughout that game, right? So, to turn that into a touchdown that late in the half was a pretty big deal. And then what else we saw here was 163 yards after the catch for Maryland. And it's a little interesting to me that they had 163 yards after the catch. Michigan, I don't know what they had. I think it was around 80. I got it right here, but yeah, to have 163 yards after the catch against Michigan, it doesn't happen too often. And I'll probably have a piece, numbers centric piece out on the site sometime this week that will kind of display when the last teams usually get after the catch against Michigan and compare that to what Maryland did. But that does just seem like more than usual. But yeah, Michigan only had 88. So Maryland nearly doubled what Michigan did after the catch. And granted, Michigan had a ton of rushing yards. I get that. But still, at the same time, 163 seems like a lot. Some teams, most teams, I think all three teams have not thrown for more than 163 yards against Michigan. Maybe I can't remember who, but Michigan was coming into the game averaging giving up 91 a game. So to give up 163 after the catch, let alone giving up, how many do they have, Maryland passing wise? 269 passing yards, and 160 of those are after the catch. So I don't know, a little concerning. I just didn't really expect that. I don't know if it was, again, haven't looked at the tape, so I'm not sure if this was a tackling thing or if it was just Rakim Jarrett and that group of talented wide receivers doing it. But before we wrap up, which we're about to do, we'll do a little bit of a final verdict segment from the two of you guys. But I'll start. I really think at the end of the day, the question we have to ask ourselves, and we might not have the answer yet, is that did that game tell us more about Maryland or Michigan? And that's really what it comes down to is, who did we learn more about from that game? Is Maryland legit, or is Michigan a bit of a pretender? Is Michigan just a top 15 team, not a top 5 team? Are they a top 10 team, but not a top 5 team? Whatever it might be. So I'm waiting to learn that. I think obviously we'll find those things out, and we like to force narratives as like analysts when it comes to these kinds of things every so often. But I think how Michigan handles Iowa will tell us a little bit more. In each game, you just got to learn a little bit more, and you can't pretend like we know everything about a team 4 weeks in when there's just so many hills for Michigan to climb before they get there. Penn State, Michigan State, and then of course Ohio State, and then whatever lies after that. So I'm interested to see which team we learned about more. If I had to guess, I'm going to roll with what I've been rolling with since like the winter, and that's Maryland's a good team. I think Maryland has a ton of experience offensively, and that's about – here's the two things you need offensively to have success in college football, or three things I should say: speed, right, good quarterback, and experience. If you have all three of those things, you're probably going to be good. And Maryland has a ton of experience on its offensive line. Its wide receivers are awesome. Rakim Jarrett is unreal and is going to play in the pros and was a 5-star who just decided to go to Maryland. Deontay Demas is really good and has kind of been underused this year. Talia, we've already discussed. They have, their run game. And that's the biggest difference about Maryland. I was really echoing the sentiment throughout the week is that we saw what Maryland did against SMU offensively wasn't like overly successful, but when they were the most successful against SMU was in their play action. And so I wrote in Eyes on the Enemy, if Maryland can establish the run game against the defense, that's an extremely dangerous offense against any defense in the country. Because when Talia and the running backs and you have Rakim Jarrett out there, that's a 3-headed weapon. And when you're running that RPO stuff and you have to keep everything honest in all 3 phases or all 4 phases, because you have to respect the pass, you have to respect the QB keep, you have to respect the running back, and they even flipped one to a tight end. So they did 4 different things with those RPO looks, and that's really difficult for a defense to adjust to and to hold contain and, yada, yada, yada. So I think Maryland's just a good team. That's where I'm at with it. I'll pass it on to you, Libby, and then we'll go to Brock for your guys' verdicts.
Yeah, if you're judging it from the AP poll, like Michigan moved from number 4. So I think that alone shows that, at least from the writer's perspective, or at least the experts, that, Maryland is a tough challenge, and Michigan, probably deserved to be number 4 still from how they responded to it. Looking at their schedule, Maryland could easily be 8-1 by mid-November when they have to play Penn State on the road and then Ohio State at home in back-to-back weeks. So if this could be at best a 9-3 team, maybe 10-2 if something crazy happens. But yeah, this could be the best fourth place team in the Big Ten East. Like it's just from looking from what I've seen. Yeah, it's a trap. Maryland's always going to be a trap game, but yeah, I think this easily showed that Maryland can easily prepare themselves and to step it up against top competition. So.
Yeah, I think you guys got it. I would have guessed when Brandon you first mentioned the prompt for this segment that about Maryland, and they're a good team. I think Zach, you said it great. Their offense is good. Defense was better than I expected, honestly. And
yeah, they really held up nice.
Yeah, and so fourth place team in the Big Ten East. They probably will finish fourth, but I wouldn't be surprised if they gave Penn State and maybe even Ohio State a run for their money there later in the season.
Yeah, I think the number one thing for Maryland is that RPO, man. They're going to have to account for that. Every team they play is going to have to account for that. If they establish, and this is exactly what they did. I didn't think Mike Loxley had the cojones to do it. I always thought he just, overcomplicated things for his offense, but he really established the run early. And I know and I wrote this, I know it sounds elementary, and I say it again, I know it sounds elementary to establish the run early, but what it does for you in the play action and RPO game is understated and super undervalued by folks who are trying to come up with ways teams can get better that just aren't going to recruit at the highest level. It's like, if you can scheme your tail off, you can keep yourself in games. And Michigan's unequivocally more talented than Maryland, but Maryland came into Ann Arbor and really punched them in the throat a little bit and gave them a game because of the scheme. The designs were great. The defense, the amount of dropbacks, putting that on tape, I wonder how teams are going to react. I really do. I wonder how Iowa is going to look defensively. Did Maryland kind of show how to slow down JJ? And if so, how will JJ adjust? Will he approve? Will he ascend, or will he maybe panic more than which way will it go? Right, a lot of storylines. Like I said earlier, let him play out. Let's not force him. Let's just look at him all from an angle, and let's be like, hey, ton of possibilities. And the beauty of college football is anything can happen. So let's find it out, and when it does, we'll talk about it. Until then, here's what I think is going to happen. And if I'm wrong, then I told you guys before, a million things can happen in college football, and it's a lot more fun when you just let it happen. So that is Rise to the Victors for the week, talking Michigan and Maryland. Make sure you guys tune in to Maize and Blue Review throughout the week, michigan.rivals.com. All kinds of stuff coming at you. If you're more interested in more podcasts, I should say, and you're on Apple or you're on Spotify or you're watching on YouTube, we have Dennis Fithian's Good Afternoon Michigan Football every single day at 1 p.m. Monday through Friday. We have the recruiting show, Who's Got Next, with Libby, Davis, and I, and some combination of that. Every Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we have Cut-Ups, or that might be Tuesday night. On Tuesday night, we have Cut-Ups, which is live on Twitter. It's Steven Ostentoski and Trevor McHugh. Thursday, we have our betting show, Sharpening the Edge. And Friday, we have our show, Sharpening the Edge. I'm all over the place. It's been a long day. My microphone's unplugged and plugged back in 10 times. On Thursday, we have Josh and I's show, Hail to the Podcast. And on Friday, we have our betting show, Sharpening the Edge. So make sure you guys tune into that. We have also got the post-game show on Saturday after the game with Dennis Fithian on YouTube live as well. Follow us on Twitter at Michigan Rivals, Instagram and TikTok, Maize Blue Review. And these guys you can follow at Brock Heilig, at Rivals Libby, and at me, Brandon Justice _ So with all that being said, mouthful and the housekeeping done, appreciate you guys tuning in. Look, that was fun. Watching college football when it's competitive is way more fun than watching David versus Goliath every week. So if you don't like college football and you can't accept the fact that winning games in college football at any cost doesn't matter. I don't care if you won by 1 or you won by 100. You won, and teams like Oklahoma can't say the same. And that happens every week in college football. So take what you can get, stop wanting more, and just love the fact that your team doesn't have a loss yet, or love the fact that your team won this week. Whatever it may be, find a way to love your college football team. Stop being so miserable. This has been Rise to the Victors. We'll talk to you guys sometime later this week. Michigan.rivals.com, baby, sign up.